next little part is interesting. Now this is a story, but it has a big moral of the story. I just realized I didn't talk about the moral of the story with my cancer story, but that's fine. So this story happened when I was married. Now it's not like, it may not sound dramatic in the moment, but it actually changed the course of my life for the better. So it's worth sharing for sure. And you're gonna be like, Kelly, you're so basic. I don't even care. Yes, in some areas I am totally basic. So here's what it is. When I was in the I didn't know it was gonna be the very end of my marriage, but I'm nearing the end of my marriage. And on Saturdays, I would be at home cleaning the house by myself while my former partner was, I guess, at work. There's a lot of things about that marriage that someday I'll talk about, but it was kind of like being married as Cinderella, but you don't have the prince that you hoped for. So on Saturdays, I would have to clean the whole house by myself and get ready for the next working week, etc. Well, it was a beautiful spring day, and I was in the front part of our house we had really huge, beautiful windows. They were open, and I had the front door open because like the bugs weren't out yet. And so it's just beautiful. There's a breeze. It's great. And in the front office, we had taken up the carpet at one point, and it just had concrete. And we had tried to stain the concrete, but we didn't do a great job of it. So it was okay, but it needed to be cleaned often, which is really annoying. So what ended up happening that day is, as I'm literally having to be on my hands and knees, like Cinderella, cleaning this concrete of my husband's office, all of a sudden, it sounds like there is a TV on. I was like, we had a TV upstairs. We had a beautiful 2-story house and an exercise room upstairs. I was like, did the TV turn itself on? That's weird. So I stand up and I listen for it, and I realize it's actually coming outside the front. So we lived on a cul-de-sac in a really pretty area, and the wind, I guess, was just headed in my direction. And so I could hear what sounded like a TV show or an argument, but I couldn't exactly tell. I stood there for a second and I realized that it was the neighbors that are kind of catty corner on the cul-de-sac. It was them having an argument. He is a surgeon, and at the time, I think this was his third wife. And based on how the argument was going, I didn't hear the words, thankfully, but you could tell that it wasn't going well. So I go ahead and go back inside. I quietly close the front door. And this is like physically a large cul-de-sac. So for me to be able to hear them, even if the wind is in my favor, this is not a good thing. But I got to keep the windows open because I don't want to turn on the AC. I'm back down on my hands and knees like Cinderella, cleaning the concrete. And I can just hear them talking. And in the moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to go through another divorce and have to go through this yet again. But I've met her. She's phenomenal and wonderful and kind and sweet. He is arrogant at his best, but she's not. So I think for just a moment, I was like, dang it, I feel bad for both of them. They're probably going to get a divorce, and she's going to find another one. Like, she'll find another great guy. And as I think of that, on my playlist, Irreplaceable by Beyonce comes on. And then it hits me for a second, like, yeah, she'll find another him. And it hits me in that moment, Kelly, you can find another verbally abusive husband if that's your goal. If your only goal is not to be alone, you can find someone else to treat you like crap. If that's what you're scared of, that this marriage might end and you'll be left with no one. If the only goal is not to be alone, which it's not, but if the only goal is not to be alone, you can find someone else. You can find a dozen other guys to treat you like crap. You can find another you in a minute. And I start to realize, well, no, that's not the goal. The goal is not to find another person exactly like my husband, my ex-husband. The goal is that I would find someone who's kind and loving and funny and goofy and intelligent and wants to be kind to me, who I can take care of, not because they demand it, but because I want to take care of them and I love them. That's the goal. And so in that moment, I realized, okay, you know what? Even if you do get a divorce and you're alone again, it's going to be better than what you have. So I just want to encourage you a couple of things. And this is a little mini kind of good rant. Well, I look about, or at least 10 years younger than I actually am, which means often I'm not trying. I don't hate it, but I'm not trying. I often don't get asked out by gentlemen my age, which I'm kind of okay with. I get out exclusively since my divorce by younger men. And sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, Kelly, look at you. Especially when guys hear that, they're like, I'd like to have somebody young. I'm like, hold up. The goal isn't younger. The goal isn't older. The goal isn't richer or taller or whatever. The goal is finding your mate, your good fit. I don't know if there's anything such as a perfect fit, but finding that person. That's the goal. The goal isn't younger, necessarily hotter or older or whatever. One of my friends, when I worked as a receptionist, her husband had cheated on her multiple times. And each time she had told him, like, listen, I can't put up with this much longer. Well, the last time that he did it, she said, this is the last time. Like, if you do it again, we're done. He cried, he seemed to repent, etc. And then less than 6 months later, he did it again. And at that point, she really struggled with it, but she did end up getting a divorce. And eventually when she started to date again, I was like, well, what kind of guy do you want to look for? And she goes, you know what? I'm going to go exclusively for older guys. That way I'm always the younger one. I'm like, whoa. Listen, that's a good example of no. If you're going to go for, I'll always be the younger one, there will always be somebody even younger than you, always. Or if you are looking for someone older, there will always be someone older than who you're with. Or somebody richer or thinner or smaller chested or can tan or whatever. So I tie all this together with this, and someday I'll expound on it more. Being in a bad marriage, and then also seeing Princess Di and Prince Charles in a marriage that was obviously not a good marriage, obviously a bad marriage. The thing I realized watching their marriage was this. Prince Charles found one of the most fun, kind, intelligent, younger women ever to exist in the public eye. But he wasn't in love with her. He was in love with Camilla Parker Bowles. And if you were to ask generically people, hey, just pictures of the two and a little bit of description of who they are, the stereotypical mind that thinks these stereotypical choose somebody younger, choose somebody older, they would be like, oh, he'll be happy with Di, hands down. But here's the thing that I realized. If the core of who you are, whatever that core is, if the core of who you are is not in love with the core of who that other person is, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that is going to make it better or that's going to help. That person can get older, they can get richer, they can get poorer and get really fit, or something can happen to them. But if the core of who you are is in love with the other person, then you're going to be okay, because those are the two things that have to stay together. But if the core of who you are isn't in love with the core of who the other person is, nothing's going to help. Nothing's going to change that. It didn't matter that literally, man, if you weren't alive when Princess Di was alive, I feel like you did miss out. She changed the world in how people dealt with things like AIDS and landmines when she didn't have to. She did so much good for the world that most of the entire world loved her, except the man she was married to. That hit my home, my heart, when I was sitting there in that moment listening to Irreplaceable by Beyonce, because even since then, my dating life is unique, and it doesn't come up often, but it comes up often enough that comments are made. And it's not that I'm not trying to find younger or older or anything. I'm trying to find like Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness. I think he is 13 or 14 years younger than her. They've been married 25 years. The core of who they each are is in love with the core of the other person. So as age happens, as he gains weight and loses weight for roles, as they both get older, all of the stuff, all of that's okay, because the core of who they are is in love with each other. So the reason I say that is I've had so many friends over the years, date somebody for 2 years, for instance, or think, hey, when I start dating, I'm going to have this kind of person. Or sometimes for guys, I better find somebody really petite and younger. Or for girls, I need to find somebody who's this and this and this. All of those peripheral things do not matter. Also, as a wrap up, here's a good example. So I'll try not to talk about George and Janice too much and actually use their real names. I'll probably change them out. But in this case, it's kind of funny. So years ago in the spring, for whatever reason, we never figured out why, Janice got a severe rash of hives over her entire body. So if you can imagine like bubble wrap that, that was inflated and then deflated. That's what her entire skin from head to toe looked like. And I'm not proud that I thought about this in the moment, but for a split second, while I'm looking at her, she did not look like herself at all. She looked like some other version of herself that had never taken care of herself, and it was kind of rough. And in the moment, I was like, oh dear God, what about George? Will George still love her? And then I realized very quickly, George adores the core of who she is. And she can look like whatever. George adores her, loves her, is enamored with who she is at her core. This isn't going to affect that at all. And it didn't. And she's fine now. But that really hit home for me. I just want to encourage you, either A, if you're single and you're looking, find out who you really are, because that is the part of you that needs to find a mate. If you're married and you don't have that, you need to see if you can have that with the person that you're married to. If you're not, you need to be really honest with both of yourselves and figure out what your future looks like. I'm not saying everybody gets divorced when they're unhappy for 4 seconds. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I am saying this. I was married for 13 years. I did every single thing you can think of a married woman would do to keep her husband happy. I'll just leave it at that. On a regular basis, including cooking, etc. And no part of who I was ever going to make my ex-husband happy, because he didn't love me at the core of who I was. He didn't even like me. He actually kind of resented the core of who I was. So I just want to encourage everybody this. Real love is like clean water. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal until you can't get it. And every person that lives now and has ever lived on this planet needs and deserves real, true love. Not like, oh, I asked true love, but like true love. And so that your mind and your heart and soul can grow in this lifetime and have a better life, spend some time figuring that out. Don't glaze over it, because the lack of it will eventually hurt you and will kill your soul. I hope that was a little bit different. You may like it, you may hate it. You may have to share it. I'm just saying. So I just encourage you, as always, learn from some of the things that I have learned from and pass it on if it helps. All right. I hope you have a good week.